Well, let's put some of the big questions. Not whether alien life forms are going to take us over and kill us. We won't put those questions to my political panel this afternoon. On the left, we've got journalist and commentator Jonathan Lis, and on the right, Bill Bowkett, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And let's start. Thank you. Happy Easter to you both. Let's start by talking about the Archbishop of Canterbury's Easter sermon. I think that the Archbishop of Canterbury, he does have every right to criticise the government's policy, just as I have every right to say, well, look, one of the things that has led to a climate where the government might want to bring in this sort of policy is people's concerns about the housing crisis, people's concerns about the costs that are involved in housing refugees. I'm not sure if I was the owner of 200,000 acres of land, and if I'd profited by selling houses myself and building them, I'm not sure that I would be in a position to make that criticism. So I have every right to call him a hypocrite. What do you say, Jonathan Lis?
Well, sorry, what point are you making about the hypocrisy about the church owning property?
I'm making a point that they could very easily, by their own commission, solve the housing crisis. They could donate land or sell it to the government or lease it for a very small amount of money so that refugees could be housed there. One of the things that has led to the climate where there is this depth of feeling about refugees is the housing crisis itself, of which the Church of England has profited from. And so I'm not sure he is in a position to criticise.
Okay, well, the first thing I'd say to that is it just seems like a kind of a bogus argument, because no one is. I mean, I've never heard anyone say that the moral panic about migration is because of the housing crisis. I mean, we have so much. It's really not. It's not at the source of. It's not the source of it. It's not the source of. People talk about public services. Perhaps I've never heard people say that it's sort of the housing. Obviously,
you don't believe that more people coming to the United Kingdom has contributed to the crisis that people have trying to either get rented or to buy accommodation. You've genuinely never heard that connection being made? I have
heard of it a couple of times, but much more often it's about public services that people say. But I think really it's just kind of a straw man, if you like, because really the government is not, implementing this horrendous, inhuman policy because of the housing shortage. I mean, that is just completely for the birds. It is because at its heart, it is a deeply xenophobic government that doesn't like following its international responsibilities, is looking for a way to outsource those responsibilities, is taking a racist and colonialist policy in kind of sending them to Rwanda, not just for processing, but actually deporting them. It's a kind of trafficking of people, which is just so nakedly racist in the sense that why should poor brown or black people be the only people who should have no say at all in where they might want to live? And it's not going to solve the problem. They're just going to try and leave Rwanda, as happened when Israel did the same inhuman policy, which it then stopped.
All right. Let me put some of that.
It's nothing about the church, but just about the church. Of course, they have every right to talk about it, because if they, you'd expect them to. If the church doesn't talk about deeply unchristian policies, and what is the point of a church, especially an established church? If you don't want the church to get involved in politics, then depoliticize the church.
Fair enough, and I have every right to say that they are also presiding over those policies themselves, the Church of England. But Bill, what do you have to say about this? Look, I'm not a huge fan of this Rwanda policy myself. I have to say, I think that it is not a great option, especially as there isn't a safe route. If there was a processing centre in France, as well as perhaps the Rwanda policy simultaneously, perhaps I would have a bit less of a problem of it. So we've got that element, but also, though, I'm not sure the Church of England is in a position to be criticising. But Jonathan says, hang on, no, nothing to do with the Church of England. It's their job to criticise. What say you, Bill?
I think it's very important, especially in an occasion like this weekend, to not politicise Christianity in this significance. I think with Justin Welby's comments of the Rwanda scheme ungodly, when actually we know that the Church of England have always been hypocritical in the past when handing out 0 hours contracts to members of staff that work within the Church of England, even though he said it's a return to ancient evil. But I think on the Rwanda scheme as well, I think from the government's side is that they are trying to find a rational measure to stop the current refugee crisis, especially breaking the model of people smuggling. My only problem with it is that I don't think it would work, and it's incredibly expensive. This initial trial that they're doing is going to cost £120 million, and also we're having to then work with a country with a dictator like Paul Kagame, who is notoriously known for his human rights abuses on dissidents. So while I think in this instance with Welby, it is difficult for him to not necessarily be political.
And is an institution that owns 200,000 acres of land that has profited from the housing crisis themselves, a crisis that has arguably, though perhaps Jonathan disagrees, contributed to the depth of feeling around all of this. Are they in a position to start criticising?
I've seen that argument being made before. I think Charles Moore and The Spectator did it as well. The problem with the Church of England is that they can't, because the Church of England themselves are also bankrupt. They're losing financial substances. Less people are now attending church as a result. And
sell some of the land you're sitting on. Sell some of the land you're sitting on, or why don't you build more properties and sell them for a decent rate? In the last 7 years, they've built nearly 4,000 properties. 3,000 of them were not affordable. Perhaps that's why people aren't buying them.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a reason for that, but we can't just necessarily frame, the Church of England as being a preposterously hypocritical and virtue signaling organisation. I think during the pandemic they have helped enormously within the wider civil society to help people during lockdown, to deliver goods, to help people with less need as well. But I think it just rounds off, for me at least, Welby's comments about the Rwanda scheme, where they're trying to find a viable alternative to the issue of illegal immigration and also asylum seekers when speaking his 2 cents about it.
All right, let's move on and talk about Boris Johnson. I still want every single day seem to ask myself the question of how we ended up with such an utter dishonest buffoon as Prime Minister. But anyway, I have to get over my personal feelings. Now, he's apparently, not only was he accidentally sort of accosted with a cake, apparently, not only did he seem to seemingly wander into his own garden and have no idea that there was a party taking place, all of that obvious lies said to Parliament, by the way, but now he's accused of not only being at some of these parties, but also arranging one, telling people that he wanted them to let off steam by having some drinks and pouring out the drinks himself. I mean, is that going to be enough to make him resign? Is this, again, a storm in a wine glass? Bill Bowkett, what do you say?
I would say that for the story to come out about Boris Johnson, I'm not entirely surprised. He's had to backtrack on his words completely. That initial claim that he made in December that all guidance was followed, that he was not aware of illicit do's happening within Downing Street and Whitehall during the pandemic, and the public know that he's a dishonest individual. And as we saw with the YouGov, there was a YouGov poll last week, a Snap YouGov poll after the fine was put to Boris Johnson very soon, like that he should resign. I just don't think at this moment in time that Tory MPs think that it's the right moment to oust Johnson as Prime Minister. As mentioned in the news bulletin just 5 minutes ago, we have the war in Ukraine happening, the cost of living crisis. The Prime Minister has also just introduced his energy security strategy, and he would want to materialise that as well. And Downing Street has now insisted, and the Prime Minister will insist this tomorrow when he does speak in the House of Commons, that he needs to deliver for the British people. And he's hoping that he can reward voters and Tory MPs by introducing these red meat policies like the Rwanda deal, like the energy security strategy, that hopefully will win back trust within the Conservative Party.
All right. Well, this Jonathan Lis, journalist and commentator, Bill Bowkett as well, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Jonathan, I have been bracing myself for your answer on whether we just need to get over it. Get over Partygate. Yes, Boris Johnson was accosted by a cake, which he denied. Yes, he wandered into his garden and there was a party going on, but he didn't know it was a party. He thought it was a work event. You can't blame him. Yes, he clearly lied to Parliament. Yes, he's the first Prime Minister that's ever been fined. And now it turns out that he was pouring out the drinks and apparently he organised the party himself. But you know what? We need to get over it. Time to move on. What do you say, Jonathan?
Well, the first thing I'd say is in response to what Bill said a moment ago about Ukraine and the cost of living crisis. I mean, yes, we have a war in Europe and we have a massive economic crisis. Obviously, the least suitable candidate to resolve either of those problems would be a narcissistic sociopath who has only ever cared about himself and has never been competent or fit to take responsibility for any other human being. So clearly, that is even more reason to get rid of this man. This man is a threat to Britain's constitution. What Peter Hennessy said, the constitutional expert, was absolutely right. This man is a rogue prime minister. As I said in an article a couple of years ago, the anti-prime minister, because every single thing he does is about advancing his own political and personal interest. It is totally toxic for the well-being of this country and the body politic and the Conservative Party to scramble to debase itself to save this man who would sacrifice any single one of them in a heartbeat is truly gross. I cannot understand it. It is totally disgusting. They are acting in their own self-interest because they cannot get rid of him while they think he's the best person to help maybe keep their seats.
What does that say about them? What does that say about them?
It's the best person to keep their seats. What does that say about the rest of the Conservative Party?
Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I think we're on the same page. I mean, Bill, come on. I mean, it comes to something when a Ukrainian war and genocide is the thing that's sort of keeping you in your job. And also, we got rid of Thatcher, arguably, in my opinion, Jonathan, brace yourself, I might need to get you a crash helmet. Arguably, in my opinion, one of our greatest ever prime ministers. We got rid of her. I told you need a crash helmet. We got rid of her during the Gulf War. We've changed prime ministers. We changed prime minister during the start of the Second World War. So Ukraine, is it really any excuse?
No, I think it's especially with history has shown that war doesn't necessarily guarantee survival for any political leader, Chamberlain, Thatcher, others, and so forth. I think just the reason I think here is that I think number one, while I think war will forever be in that background, that backdrop to our response to the crisis, either militarily or politically, obviously domestic issues are playing such a pivotal role at the moment, and actually Tory MPs. While there isn't the numbers that there were back in January to oust Johnson's Prime Minister through the 1922 committee of backbench MPs, they're waiting very tactically at the right moment to oust Johnson. Whether it is the local elections that we have next month, we've also got the full Sugro report, which hopefully should give us the full picture. I mean, we're getting the full picture right now about Boris Johnson instigating these lockdown parties, especially the one around Lee Kane's leaving do. But I think Boris Johnson kind of knows, at least from his inner circle, from polling, from the criticism, both within his party and the opposition, that his time as Prime Minister is indeed numbered.
But that will lead to the question of who on earth would you replace him with? I mean, there's Dim Dom, which I just couldn't even stomach for a moment. Rishi, who I'm quite sure Boris Johnson is briefing against him, and all of this tax stuff has come out, and he has lied. I mean, he's been absolutely fined himself as well, so that sort of sets him aside. Nadeem Zahawi, I mean, he seemed vaguely competent in getting the vaccine rollout done, but of course he lied about vaccine passport. I mean, it's a pretty bottom of the barrel situation for anyone that you could think would sweep in and sort that whole mess out. I mean, come on, Jonathan, you got to name someone. I'm going to make you name someone. Jacob Rees-Mogg, you like him, don't you?
Look, it's not my responsibility to sort out the Conservative Party's dire party management. And if they don't have anyone competent to be Prime Minister, well, that tells you the Conservative Party...
But come on, you can name someone. Come on, you've got to name someone, Jonathan. If you have to choose one.
Listen, pretty much anyone would be better than Boris Johnson. And I say that as a critic of pretty much all of them. There are decent... I mean, I use the term advisedly. There are decent, when I say decent, there are people who can sometimes think about other people besides themselves, such as Tom Tugendhat, for example, who I don't think would have the votes for it. If you're looking on the front bench, then Ben Wallace has acquitted himself well over Ukraine. Even Liz Truss, for whom I have no time whatsoever, would at least try hard. You know, she tries. My God, she tries hard. So she would at least, you know, put some welly into it. I don't think she'd be any good.
Bell, any of those ring any bells or resonate with you? Any of them do you think impress you?
Liz Truss is definitely one of the most popular within Tory membership. I would also put Nadine Zazzari in there. I think lots of people have respect for him for the vaccine rollout and actually some of the work he's been doing over education coming out of the pandemic as well. Right. But like you say, it's not exactly a vested pool to pick from.
It really is. It's just a sort of muddy, slurry-filled pool, probably. But also, you know, again, one of the big problems we've got, I know we've got to move on, but one of the big problems we've also got, and it is worth acknowledging, is that we wouldn't have that awful slurry-filled pool if we had an effective opposition as well. And that's part of
Well,
this.
I mean, we do have an effective opposition. They've been ahead in the polls for months now with healthy leads.
I don't look at them as a government in waiting.
I think you're in the minority there, because a lot of people, even on the Conservative side, are saying that this is a competent front bench with shadow ministers you can see in government.
I think that they've papered over the cracks in their party, which they're clearly divided on whether they're left, they're right, they're middle, they're up, they're down. I don't think they know what they are. Bill?
I think there's been a bit more direction from the Labour Party in recent months.
Well, it couldn't have got worse.
Starmer had a very rocky first year as Prime Minister, you know, especially going into the pandemic. But I think when it comes to voters' decisions, obviously the May local elections, people are going to view it in different ways. Is it to do with Partygate? Is it to do with actual national issues? Or is it to do with more local issues? Or are they going to take it as more of a protest vote? Because voters generally see Boris Johnson as a dishonest man, and they may think, okay, I've been a lifelong Conservative my entire life, but on this occasion I couldn't vote for that man. I'd rather vote for someone like Starmer, you know, a man who's been Director of Public Prosecutions, a respected politician and public figure, and on this occasion I'm going to vote for Labour, just to get, and then that would send a message then to the Conservative Party to then react from that.
Just a quickie to finish on then, and Bill, while I've got you, just a quickie. Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Netflix, do you think that they should be attending the Queen's Jubilee, or will it just create a media storm and circus, and will it become all about them? And actually, if they don't want to be members of the royal family, they can celebrate privately with her. What do you say?
I say that if the... I'm sorry, who was that addressed?
That was to Bill, but go on. So you start, Bill. Go on.
I would say just briefly, I think with the royal family, it would be nice in this instance to see the family just get back together and sort out the more personal and private issues. And hopefully, kind of by doing that, it would restore both of their images and their reputation, right. and we'd all be much happier as a result.
Jonathan, what do you say?
I say that if the Queen wants them there and they want to go there, they should go. It's really none of our business. And, you know, like Bill said, it would be an opportunity for public reconciliation. If it doesn't happen, then that's really not our business either.
Oh, my word. What have you two both been drinking? Just some beautiful, lovely conciliatory Kool-Aid?
It's Easter. It's a time of forgiveness.
I don't think I like that at all. You both agree, and you're both being really nice. We don't get you on for that at all. Listen, really good to have you both. Thank you, Jonathan Lis, journalist and commentator, Bill Bowkett, political commentator with Young Voices UK. So there you go.